KTN News, Nairobi.
Thank you, David, for that report. And David says the price of mzinga is normally known will go up. And to just break down on the specifics on this bill is Owen Flynn, CEO 254 Breweries. Owen, welcome to KTN News as we have this discussion on the finance bill. And as David says, the price of spirits will go up, but that does not only affect the spirits, but even the beer manufacturers where you sit. And as we have this discussion, where are we in trying to find a consensus with the National Assembly, the Finance Committee, on this specific bill before it is actually passed?
Well, certainly the tax on beer and spirits in Kenya already is very high. In the case of beer, the tax that we pay today before the bill on beer is about 40 times higher than it would be in America, 200 times higher than it would be in Germany. So we already have a very high base that we're starting off on. What we have today before the finance bill is we have a tax per litre on 3 different categories. So we have beer, wines, and spirits. What the finance bill is proposing to do is to bring out an ABV tax in 2 categories. So they have beer, wine, and spirits in one category at 22.5, and then they have spirits in its own category at 16. So what that does is it changes a little bit the ratio in which the alcoholic products that we enjoy today are taxed relative to each other. So for example, we have a 4.5% beer and we have a 10% beer. Today they're taxed the same. After the bill, the 10% beer will be taxed 2.5 times higher than the 4% beer. So basically, any beer that's around 6% will be around break even. Beers below 4 or 5% will actually have a reduction in tax, and then beers above 6%, the tax will go up. In the case of Muratatu, our 10% beer, the tax will go up by 65%.
And these beers that you're talking about are ones that are freshly brewed, right?
Yes, we brew fresh beer. Our brewery is down in Kikuyu, and we would generally advocate for lower ABV, safer alcohol products, which would be like beer, wine, and cider. And the current regime heavily taxes beer, wine, and cider, and spirits are the tax relative to, all are high relative to the rest of the world, but relative to the low ABV products, spirits are taxed at a lower rate. And I would say that is probably the main driving factor why Kenya is very much a spirit drinking country. In the last couple of years, Kenya has, spirits have overtaken beer, wine, and cider combined by volume. So we drink more volume of 40% spirits than we do volume of safer, lower alcohol products like beer, wine, and cider. So it's definitely the tax code which drives Kenyan consumers to spirits. This is a big hit for spirits, and I would expect it to drive more. We already also have 60% of spirits today being consumed illicit outside of the tax bracket. So we would expect that to probably go up further. It is somewhat trying to balance the scales between, so beer, basically beer is staying the same for most of us, and then the spirits are kind of coming up towards that. But beer is at 22.5, spirits are at 16, so it actually highlights the fact that for a company like us making fresh beers, we want to keep products as natural and healthy as possible. But even for us, with Muratatu's going up 65%, if we blended that with spirits, the tax would actually go down. So as bad as it is for spirits, it's even worse for beer, wine, and cider.
And also the story that we just ran, this tax is usually called a sin tax. Now, here's a question where with the current, the way Kenya has, what we've experienced before, is people have moved even away from the properly generated spirits and have gone to the illicit liquor, which has left many blind. And with these finance bill coming into place, there is the threat of people now even moving further, shifting further into these illicit liquor. So how then do we have this conversation such that both the manufacturers, the government are happy with the bill that is coming on board? Because at the end of the day, the person who gets to benefit is the consumer.
Well, we have a tax code fundamentally both now today and with the new bill that does drive Kenyans towards spirits. We have a higher tax rate on beer, wine, and cider, and a lower rate on spirits, and the result is that it drives people to higher alcohol products. So, I mean, at a systemic level, you would like to see it at least flat, or even in the other direction. So, if it's actually more economical for manufacturers to make lower ABV products, we will make lower ABV products. Over the last 10 years, what you've seen is like Karoche, for example, used to be a beer company, right? But then they shifted really almost completely into Crescent Vodka. You see across the board, both consumers and manufacturers have gravitated when all of the alcoholic manufacturers were listed by the government in February. We saw out of 55 alcohol manufacturers in the country, 47 are spirits companies, right? So that's very unusual. You won't find that in other countries. If you go to France, you'll find people drinking wine. If you go to Germany, you'll find people drinking beer. And a lot of that is cultural, and a lot of it is tax. The tax is lower on those products, and it pushes people towards those products. So in Kenya, we have 50 different traditional beers, such as Muratina, Busa, Nazi, and so on, which are natural, low ABV products, but they are conflated in the minds of consumers and in the media with chang'aa. Chang'aa is a spirit which can be very dangerous and can contain methanol and make you go blind. But those traditional beers have never made anyone go blind. They can't do that, and they're much, much safer. But we're conflating them with these illicit products. I'm not sure what it was in the piece. When you said illicit, you showed a traditional, a traditional beer being made. But the commentator was actually talking about spirits and things that can kill people and make them go blind. So.
And in terms of this bill and the cost of doing business in this country, what does this mean in terms of for the manufacturer, the jobs in this country? Because also on that story, people are risking the fact that companies and factories might shut down.
Well, if you incentivize, let's say out of those 55 alcohol producers, 47 are making spirits. If it was attractive for them to make beer, wine, and cider, they would, or if it was attractive for them to make Muratina, they would make Muratina, if they were allowed to make Muratina. But something has to be attractive. At the moment, everything looks bleak, and you see these guys talking about, well, we'll just move across the border to Uganda, Tanzania, and so on. But the point that I suppose from our perspective, and I, speaking as a small independent brewer in Kenya, we can create a lot more jobs by actually empowering small brewers. We have thousands of small brewers around the country that are not allowed to brand their products, they're not allowed to retail their product, they're not allowed to sell their products in bars and restaurants and hotels. And they can create thousands and thousands of jobs and increase the tax revenue. And businesses will follow the tax code. So we're being pushed at the moment to make spirits. Spirit producers being pushed out of the country. But we would suggest to push people in the other direction. Push people towards safer, low ABV products. Allow traditional beers to license their products, to brand their products, and so on. We can create a lot of jobs. We can drink a lot more safer, healthier alcohol.
In a minute, Owen, this conversation is ongoing. Before this bill is passed, what would you want to tell the Finance Committee?
Well, we spoke to the Finance Committee on Tuesday, representing the small independent brewers of Kenya. We said a lot of things along the lines of what I was just saying, and what our proposal is, ultimately, we understand that the big industry groups, their main focus is, of course, to remove the double taxation of excise and to reduce the spirit number further, which we completely understand the logic behind that. So what we're coming in as small brewers say, don't make it impossible for Kenyan entrepreneurs to go and start making, a small scale brewery. Make it, because we can create a lot more jobs by doing that. So small scale brewers, we take up 0.3% market share now. We employ 500 people. The 99% of the market share in the case of beer employs 1,200 people. So you can see how a relatively small number of small companies can create a lot of jobs. So our proposal, to the committee was really along those lines of having allowances for an on-ramp for small brewers to come on and at least pay the same rate for our beer as our spirit. If the rate is lower for the spirit, effectively we're being told if you blend your product with spirits, the tax will go down. Mm-hmm. We want to be pushed in the other direction. But we also see what the government is doing in terms of trying to balance that, and we see that there's good intention there, but it's just everything is too high. Mm-hmm. Kenyan consumers cannot really handle all of this cost.
Owen Flynn, CEO 254 Breweries, as we talk about the excess duty that is being introduced on alcoholic beverages, and there is need for conversation and engagement by all parties in making sure that both parties are happy at the end of the day.
Break. Just ahead, Kenyans